Hi, I'm Stu from Hive Automation and welcome to the Hive. In today's video, we're taking a look at my new Switchbot Roller Shade, a smart motorized roller blind that promises an easy retrofit solution for any window. As always, we'll take a look at what's in the box, we'll get the blind installed, and we're going to explore and test out the native app. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified when I release new videos. While you're at it, if you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, there's some affiliate links in the video description to smart home gadgets that you can buy for your own smart home and support the channel at the same time. Or you can also support the channel directly through my Buy Me a Coffee link. Of course, those affiliate links and my Buy Me a Coffee link can all be found on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So once again, just before the new year, Switchbot reached out asking if I'd like to review their Switchbot Roller Shade, and of course I said yes. Some of the features that really drew me to reviewing the Switchbot Roller Shade were that it's a full blackout and privacy roller shade, and the included Switchbot fabric is a full blackout, which means it blocks all of the sunlight, which is perfect for bedrooms or home theaters. And it also provides UV protection, insulation, and privacy. If you want a different look, the fabric is interchangeable, allowing you to keep your existing style, but upgrading to a smart shade. Switchbot does claim that this particular Switchbot Roller Shade runs almost silent at only 30 decibels in its silent mode. And from what I noticed when testing it out, it is actually really quiet. You'll barely hear it moving at all. The app does allow you to set some schedules as well, so the blinds will automatically open in the morning and close at night, which is great for energy efficiency and security. And if you don't want to have to remember and manually charge the battery every few months, you can pick up the optional extra Switchbot solar panel to keep the battery topped up with just a few hours of sunlight each day. That said, the built-in battery takes about 8 hours to charge over USB Type-C, and that covers you for up to 8 months of usage. So it's going to take a while before you need to charge it up again. There's multiple control options too. There's a wired controller included in the box if you prefer manual operation, and you can use the Switchbot app to open, close, or set schedules, etc. It works with Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri shortcuts, IFTTT, and SmartThings so that you can use voice control. And if you have multiple shades set up throughout the house, you can control up to 8 of them together. And lastly, for smart home users, if you have the Switchbot Hub too, then you can integrate the Switchbot Roller Shade with Matter. Now, one of the bigger selling points here is that this is an adjustable smart roller shade as well, meaning that it's going to fit a variety of window sizes. Now, directly from Switchbot, it comes in 4 sizes, and the smallest size starting at 22.8 inches or 58 centimeters, and the largest one goes all the way up to 72.8 inches or 185 centimeters, which is impressive, but I do wish it came in a slightly larger size, which I'll get to later on. It does then mean that you've got no need to go and get expensive custom-made blinds. Now, full disclosure, Switchbot sent this to me for no cost, but as always, I'm not going to let that sway my opinion. I'll give my honest thoughts on how well it works, the installation process, and whether I think that it's worth your money. Switchbot have been a great friend to the channel, and I'm grateful for their continued partnership and support, and I'm looking forward to working with them again. Switchbot also did send me the optional solar panel, which you would need to purchase separately, but it does allow for that unlimited power concept, so we'll take a look at that too. As I said, the shade comes in 4 sizes and the pricing for the roller shade varies based on those sizes. It starts obviously at small, which covers a window 580 to 800 millimeters wide. and that costs $199 US. The medium covers from 800 to 1100 millimeters wide at 219 and 99 cents US. The large covers 1100 to 1400 millimeters wide at $259.99 US. And the extra large, the one that Switchbot sent over to me, covers from a 1400 millimeter to an 1850 millimeter wide window. And that costs $309.99 US. All shades come with a 220 centimeter or 86-inch drop, and that means that it's able to cover quite tall windows. The solar panel is sold separately for $29.99 US. The Switchbot Roller Shade is currently only available from the Switchbot official website, and I'll be putting a link in the video description for you, along with a link for the Switchbot Hub that you can pick up for yourself as well to enable those matter features. Now, in terms of prerequisites, there's really not much here. You need a window, and you're going to need the Switchbot app installed on your smartphone, because we're actually going to need to do some things like calibrating the open and close positions in order to be able to use the shade. And there's also installation instructions built into the app, which is quite handy. For the installation, you'll need a drill and a drill bit. You'll need a marker, a pair of sharp scissors, and you may need a small hacksaw or sharp utility knife as well. Now, I managed to complete the installation by myself, but it'll go a lot quicker and possibly smoother if you have two people for the installation. Now, because of the size of the box, instead of trying to wield the box and go over this in video, I just took a couple of stills and I'll put them up here. And you can see on the main or front part of the sticker, it says add Switchbot Hub to support the following services for the Alexa, Google, Siri shortcuts, IFTTT and SmartThings integration. So we are going to be limited if we don't have the Switchbot Hub to being able to use the voice controls. If I zoom into the specifications on the other part of the sticker, we see here that the input power is 5 volts at 1 amp, which means 5 watts of input. So that would take an older style phone charger with the USB type A output to a USB type C plug. So next up, I obviously needed to get it out of the box. So I decided to clear off the dining table, and I laid the enormously long box out onto the dining table and got to work on cutting the tape. After cutting the tape, I figured I would look at the solar panel first because it's a much smaller box. And opening up the end, everything's in a neat little plastic tray, which I slid out and dropped a couple of things on the ground, but I picked those up, and we have the Switchbot warranty card in here that we see in every Switchbot device. And then there's the Switchbot support and social media card that we see as well fairly frequently. We've got the user manual for the solar panel here. We've got some safety and regulatory information, and then the panel itself. Now, I was a bit confused initially because on the back of the panel, it looks like the USB-C port is hard mounted and not adjustable at all. But when we get to installing it later, you'll see that that's not the case. You can actually pop the back off and release the cable. On the front of the panel, it does have 2 strips of high quality 3M VHB tape for mounting to the window, which is actually really nice. I love this VHB tape. It sticks really, really well. The only time it becomes a problem is when you're trying to take it off. We'll put the solar panel aside and take a look at the roller shade itself. Now, I had to cut down the shutter speed here to try and keep everything in focus. So I do apologize that everything is going to start looking a little bit janky here. But I grabbed the user manual out of the box, some safety information, and some regulatory compliance information here. And then opening the top of the box fully, I grabbed this cardboard box out. Opening up that box, we immediately find the fabric tape, which we will use a bit later to cut the fabric down to size. There's also a baggie with some mounting screws and wall anchors here, and another baggie with some spare self-tapping screws in there. There's a little mini stapler in here that's preloaded with staples, and I was a bit confused by this to begin with, but we'll see what that's about later on. We've got our 2 L-shaped mounting brackets. There's a little spirit level in here and a gray plastic end cap. We've got this grey silicone cable wrap for excess cable on the remote. And then there's 2 strips of cardboard with pre-cut holes and double-sided tape. We've got the remote control itself, which has about 1 meter of cable length, and that's what we would use the cable wrap for. And then we've got another warranty card and another social media and support card here. Under the flap in here, we have the cutter attachment that we'll get to see in action later. And it also includes a Phillips head screwdriver in the box. I decided to put everything back in the box before then putting that box aside so that I wouldn't lose anything. And then I pulled out the aluminium bottom rail from the box, which comes in 2 pieces. I pulled some more packaging out of the box and then the roller blind itself. And left in the box, there's a strip of plastic packaging strap, which initially I thought was a mistake, but we actually do need that a bit later on. After getting the foam off the roller blind assembly and sliding the roller blind out of the bag, we can then take a bit of a closer look. So I zoomed in to see the control end, which has the USB Type-C charging port and the port for the remote control. And in between those 2 ports, there's a little pinhole with a reset button under there. And we also see on the side, there's a tactile button that we can click as well. The construction of the unit's pretty nice. It's made with some nice aluminium extrusions and solid ABS plastic. Off camera, I connected the bottom aluminium rail together. And if we take a look here, you can kind of just grab 2 of the sections and you can easily slide them back and forth to be smaller or larger as needed. And on what becomes the top side of the headrail, when it's installed, you see that there's some screws and we can loosen those, and that allows us to do the same with the header unit to adjust the size. First impressions, it feels really solid and well built. The design is clean and minimal, and it really looks like it's going to blend in pretty well into most modern interiors. I really like the USB Type-C charging, and I didn't notice until a bit later actually that there's a USB Type-C port on the bottom of the remote as well. Now, because I want to mount this blind inside the window frame in my office, the 185 centimeter width is just going to be a little bit too big, so I do need to cut it down. And this is where we see Switchbot's attention to detail, because this process is actually pretty well thought out. Now, in order to get everything ready, we start by opening the Switchbot app and tapping Add Device in the top right-hand corner and then selecting the roller shade. After connecting, naming, and selecting the room, the app then took me to either a pictorial or video guide, and I chose pictorial where it took me through the installation steps. To begin with, we verify the contents of the box, and we see also here that we've got the tools that we need, and it recommends 2 to 3 people for the installation. Now, after doing this solo, I do recommend a minimum of 2 people. On the next page, we determine the position of the mounting brackets. Now, off camera, because I forgot to hit record, I removed the fabric roll from the header rail and then went and set the width of that header rail inside the window frame and tightened the screws. Then I set the bottom rail width to the same as that top rail width and placed the positioning cards on the marked spots on the bottom rail. And then I used those positioning cards to mark and drill some holes to then screw in the brackets, which were screwed firmly into place. With the brackets in place, I took the headrail and test fit it onto those brackets, and I was happy with the way that looked. I will say, however, in hindsight, that I didn't mount it correctly and I should have paid more attention to the instructions. Moving back to the dining table, and now we need to get ready to cut the fabric down. Now, inside the app, we can tap Resize Fabric to go through those steps. After figuring out the cutting position, I needed to wrap the roll tightly in the fabric tape, the clear stickers that we saw before, and then reinstall the fabric roll tightly into the top rail. Then I installed the cutter onto the end of the headrail and tightened the screws fully. This is the same position where you would normally have the end cap. Inside the app, we get a warning that during cutting, it's going to be rolling at a constant speed. And if we need to stop it, we can do so with the pause button in the app or the add device button on the shade. We then tap next, and then the roller shade starts moving. And once it's up to speed, we can start slowly tightening the screw on the top of the cutter all the way until it reaches the bottom on the indicator on the side. Once it bottoms out, we wait a few moments and then we can slowly back the screw all the way out and remove the cutter from the end of the headrail and remove the fabric roll, all of the tape and the end caps. We then need to unroll the fabric all the way, and there's some tape on the aluminium roller that we need to peel off, and then we can slide the plastic tube off the aluminium, and we need to either cut or break the plastic tube at the mark that was made by the cutter. Now, I wasn't able to break it, so I ended up going to the garage and used a hacksaw to cut it down. We then also need to cut the last little bit of the fabric that was protected by the tube off, and we can then slide the plastic tube back onto the main tube, ensuring that it is properly in the retaining slot in the plastic tube. We also need to loosen the 4 screws and slide the aluminium tube down to be flush with the edge of the plastic tube. Then I rolled the blind back up and grabbed the plastic strapping from the box that I thought was packaging before and lined it up at the bottom of the fabric, folding it over to form 3 layers, and then using the included stapler, I stapled the plastic strip in place with the staples spaced around 15 centimeters or 6 inches apart. With that plastic band in place, I was able to trim it down and then pop the end cap off the bottom rail and carefully slide the bottom rail over the now thickened section of the fabric, ensuring that everything was lined up correctly. And then we can install the fabric roll back into the headrail and place the original end cap back onto the headrail as well. Now that everything's back together, we now go and install the roller shade onto the brackets in the window that we installed a moment ago. And the great thing here is that it just kind of clips into place. You sit it onto the front and then push back and it clips back and it clips up. With the roller shade now installed, we can plug in the controller, and the instructions also tell us to install the cable wrap to take up the extra slap in the cable. I've not done that at this point, but I may do that later. Tapping next in the app, we can then tap Calibrate. It says to select reverse roll, as in rolling off the front, if it's installed inside the window frame. However, the way I installed it, it's a standard roll, so it's rolling off the back. The first step of calibration rolls the blind up until it stops, and when it detects that it stopped, we're prompted to say that it's detected it stopped rolling, and we either need to tell it that it's rolled up or that it's stuck. When we tap rolled up, we next get sent to setting the open position, and we can adjust that up and down with the up and down arrows a little bit there. I closed it just a little bit so that the bottom rail was hanging freely, and then tap next. Then we can set the closed or shading position in the same way. And again, I got it down to the bottom where it was just barely brushing up against the window frame and tap next. Then we can tap start using. Now, before we get into using it, I will say that it took me a little while to install everything, a little bit over an hour. That said, that included the cutting down of the fabric and also setting up for filming. I also did this pretty late last night after a full work day. But this morning I finished up by taking the back off the solar panel using a screwdriver to just kind of get under the edges there and release the clips, and unspooled the USB Type-C cable, plugged the cable into the charging port, and then after wiping down the glass with some isopropyl alcohol, I peeled the protective cover off the VHB tape and mounted the solar panel to the window. I will say this is a southern facing window, so there's a good chance that this is not going to be a perfect solution because it does not get a lot of full sun. Only in the late evenings as the sun is going down will it see full exposure to the sun, and I'll be interested to see how it performs. So now the blind is paired, the solar panels installed, we can go and have a look around at the controls. Right on the front page of the controls, there's a slider control there. We can grab the handle and set the position, and then the roller shade will open or close to the position that we've set. There's customized actions here, and there's predefined fully open and fully closed actions in there, and we can add others like 50% open, for example. Back out on the main page, we've got a shortcut here for fully open. pause, and fully closed, there's quiet drift control, and tapping the question mark item shows that when using this mode, your roller shade will operate at a steady and slow speed of 100 centimeters per minute to minimize device noise. Next, we've got delay, where we can set the amount of time and the position that we want the blind to move to when that time expires, and whether it's in quiet drift or standard mode. Next, we've got schedules, which is essentially the same thing, but with repeating schedules on specific days of the week and at specific times, for example, instead of being a delay. And lastly, in here, we've got the light sensor section. Now, with the solar panel installed, we can see statistics across the last 24 hours, the last 3 days, or the last 7 days, and we can then tap automation, then add, and we can see our current light level. Then we can choose what our trigger level is, whether it's either above or below the threshold, and then the light level between 2 and 10, I think it was. And then set the position for the blind that we want. And we can set this to be either all day or custom. Now, all day is going to mean that any time the trigger condition is met, the automation will fire. So you could end up with the blind opening and closing a lot if there's a lot of light change throughout the course of a day. I ended up setting this with some limits around when I want the open to trigger and when I want the close to trigger. So that's the main controls for the unit. But now we'll take a look at the settings that we can modify. From the dashboard, when we tap the cog in the top right corner, we get to the settings. And as usual, the first item in the settings is for the name, the home, and the room that the device has. We've got the customized actions, and we can customize the left and right buttons on the action panel, or we can add custom actions like we saw before. We have calibrate device in here, which we already did, but you can recalibrate. And there's also route correction if you notice deviations in the routing. We have create group in here where we could group multiple shades together and then open and close them all at the same time. There's an option to pair with the Switchbot remote and set different actions for each of the 2 buttons on a Switchbot remote. And there's an NFC option in here that we can pair NFC tags to perform different actions. Next in the settings, we've got third-party services, and this is where we find all the options to connect to things like Amazon Alexa, Google Home, etc. Next, there's share with home members. Tapping the question mark shows us what that actually means, and drilling into that menu violates my privacy. The last section, we start with logs, where if we open that, we can see when it was opened, when it was closed, and even the different positions that it might have been put into as well. The resize and install menu item takes us back to the installation guide, and there's also a resize fabric button at the bottom of this front page. Backing out, we can see help and feedback, where we can send feedback directly to Switchbot from the app, and also access the frequently asked questions. Next, we've got the firmware and battery section, and we see the battery status is 62%, and the firmware version that's installed is 1.0. Lastly, in here, we've got device info, which shows us the Bluetooth low energy MAC address for this roller blind. And then there's the delete button. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but in a future video, I'll explore the matter features using the Switchbot hub. I can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be open and close, and we might be able to set a position, but we'll test that out later. So that's my new Switchbot Roller Shade. I have to say I'm really impressed with this device. Looking at some pros and cons, for the pros, it's a reasonably easy DIY installation. You don't need to get a professional in at all. It is fully adjustable with no custom sizing needed. As for smart home integration, it should work pretty well with the major players, Amazon, Google, and Matter. And I'll be interested to see if I can get the Matter integration to work with Home Assistant at some point in the future as well. It's really quiet. That silent operation feature, you'll barely notice it moving. And that long battery life of up to 8 months per charge is fantastic. But if that doesn't quite get you there, the solar charging option makes it even better, because theoretically, you won't have the need to recharge manually ever. And lastly, for the pros, there is no chain to get tangled up on, so you don't have to worry about adding extra safety features for the roller chain. For the cons, you do need a Switchbot hub in order to enable Matter support, or even the Amazon or Google support for that matter. And at the larger sizes, like the XL that I have, it does start to get a bit pricey at over $300. So is the Switchbot Roller Shade worth it? In my opinion, if you're looking for a smart, adjustable, and easy to install motorized smart blind, then absolutely. I think that it is absolutely worth your time and money. The fact that it fits most windows and that it's easily adjustable, and lastly, it's got multiple control options, makes it one of the best smart shades on the market. Now, one thing I was a little disappointed in, I originally wanted to install this roller shade into the main bedroom window. Unfortunately, that window is over 2 meters wide, which is too wide even for the XL size that I have. So I do kind of wish that it came in an XXL size. But what do you think? Would you get the Switchbot Roller Shade for your smart home? Let me know in the comments below. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it's helped you in your home automation and smart home journey. Be sure to drop a comment below with a home automation idea that you'd like to see me cover in a future video. And don't forget to follow Hive Automation on Instagram and Facebook. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing now. While you're at it, hit the bell icon and you'll get notified when I release new videos. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to help to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Any contribution you make through Buy Me a Coffee does get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Don't forget to check out my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Stu from Hive Mind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.